everyone. Thank you for coming. Hello, Randall.
Hello, Kate.
So I'm very happy to present you our next speaker, Mr. Randall Ryan, a co-founder of HamsterBall, and some words about him. So this man composes and directs music and sound. And right?
Voiceover.
And beside that, he also casts, what do you do actually?
We do a lot of casting and voice directing, and a lot of work with voice actors.
So yeah, now we will know some tools how to use this music, yeah, to make a great voice acting, right? So you're welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. As Kate said, I am Randall Ryan, co-founder of HamsterBall Studios. As Kate said, we do a lot of music composition and production. We also do sound design. And as this suggests, we do a lot of voice acting and casting, and that's really what my role has primarily become. And it's interesting because I got into this because I was a musician. And I got off the road and started this company. And we started doing, really going after music composition and to some extent sound design. And we started getting into voiceover because the music jobs were kind of far and few between, so it was almost kind of a cash flow thing. Like if we can get them in and using, because there were more voiceover jobs, so we can get them in and using our voiceover, then maybe they'll come back to us for music. And so because I was a musician, I never thought that I should be doing anything with voice acting. So I would hire casting directors and I would hire talent agencies, and they were doing, you know, the bulk of the work. And I would sit down on sessions, and after a while I was listening to some of the people that I was hiring going, you know, I think I can, I'm not really sure that they're doing this the right way, or I'm hearing a different way to do it, and I think I can do this. Still wasn't super confident in it, so I started taking some of the smaller jobs and doing that myself, and still hiring out for other things. And after a while, I'm even listening to some of these other things for, you know, for bigger projects, and thinking, you know, I really think that I can get more out of the actors in this, and started digging deeper into it and started taking those jobs on. And I didn't understand how somebody who was never an actor, who was never performed on stage, who'd never done anything with voice outside of singing, could have this skill. It was like a happy accident. It was lovely, but I didn't understand where it came from. And then one day, I had an actor, a really talented person, but there was this long paragraph that she was just having a really difficult time absorbing, and she wasn't really getting to the gist of what it was. And I stopped and I said, okay, let's do it this way. Here's kind of what I'm hearing, and I want your own interpretation of this. Dum bam da dum bam bam da da dum. And immediately she's like, oh, got it. And she went and she did the line, and it was great. And she did this great performance of it. And something in the back of my head clicked. I had probably done this before, but I had never noticed myself doing this before. What I did is I sang the line to her. I did not sing the words. I sang a tempo. I sang a melody. I sang a rhythm. And that was enough for her to get this, and without getting the clutter of me line reading or me telling her exactly what to do, like a soloist, like, you know, do this kind of thing here, and she got it. And so then I started paying attention to other talent directors that I knew, people that I could sit in on sessions with. And I was noticing that a lot of them were doing the same kind of thing. They were using music, they were using things that they knew to speak to the actors, to get actors to actually perform in ways without stepping on the actor or telling the actor exactly what to do. And I started kind of doing a study of this, and what I realized is that music is truly a universal language. It's also a universal language to the way that we speak. And by using music principles, you can actually get deeper, better, richer performances out of actors and keep them in what I like to call flow, where they're in the character, they're in the moment, they're in the performance of what they're doing, and they're not spending all their time trying to go, well, what do I have to do to please the director? What do I have to do to please the client? They are simply doing what they do, which is acting. Oh, we went one too far. Awesome. We'll just go to that one anyway. So one of the first things is that voice acting, a lot of people think of this, and they think that there's this dark art. People go into the booth, and they do this with creatives all the time, right? I don't know what they do. I don't know how they do it. They've just got some mystical thing that they do, and they go, and it's just magic, and it's just awesome. And on some level, that's true. But the reality is that these are actually reproducible, replicable sets of skills. Nobody actually, you don't really want your actor to actually be angry, right? Or your actor to be morose, because then you're going to get bad acting performance. But they need to be able to do that. There are specific skill sets that you do that create this. And that's, once you know that, once you understand that, then again, you can kind of speak to an actor, you can kind of speak to these people and give them a skill set that they need. So here are what I call the 7 main music principles. We got pitch, amplitude, tempo, rhythm, melody, extended technique, and arrangement. And let's take all these one at a time. Pitch, your register, your key. Where does my voice sit? It sits here, bum. That's kind of my root note, right? That's where I tend to stop. That's where I tend to start my inflections from. All of us have that naturally. But you can change that, and you can change this in an actor. So if you start taking your voice up, and your pitch starts here, and this becomes your resting place, it's different than if your pitch is down here, and you start doing that. And this is really important in gaming for a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons is because due to budget, due to time constraints, due to a whole host of factors, we're often hiring actors that are doing more than one character. They're not just, they're not just coming in and they're doing this main character. Sometimes you have the flexibility to do that, but oftentimes you're having people be different things, and you don't want it to sound like the same person doing the same read. So one of the things that you can do with an actor, and actors sometimes know this, but actors sometimes need to be helped a little bit to get to a different place. One of the easiest things you can do is change that starting key, change that pitch, put them in a different spot. But even so, even if they're only doing one character, you know what that character is supposed to be. You're the keeper of that vision. And that character is supposed to look a certain way, and they're supposed to act a certain way, and they're supposed to sound a certain way. And so sometimes you need to move their starting point, move that register to a different place, get them into a different spot. You want them to be bigger, so maybe you start them down lower. You want them to be younger, and so maybe you take it up higher. But it's like what I call a macro principle, where you have a lot of movement that you can do with it. That's a really, you'll use that probably more than you'll use almost anything else on here. Amplitude, volume, how loudly we speak. This amplitude does a couple of different things. Emotion, health, those are two of the primary ones. So when you're strong, you're speaking loudly, right? I feel great, I feel good. When you're wounded, you speak softly. Oh, I can't do this. Sometimes the movement of an amplitude for an actor changes a lot of things that they do, a lot of things that they say, gets them to an emotion that you want, gets them to a state of health that you want them to be, gets them to a state of being. Tempo, the speed at which we speak. Different people have different methods of pacing. So when it comes to your actor, how fast should your actor speak? Is your character, somebody who really is confident and owns their own material and probably speaks at a faster rate than they want, then maybe the actor speaks normally and you need to speed them up because they need to be talking like this because they know exactly what they're talking about. Or you slow them down a little bit because they do know what they're talking about, but they want to convey information. And so you slow the tempo. and allow them to emphasize different words. Maybe they're a brute. They speak like this, but they speak kind of slowly because Hulk smash. Rhythm, slightly different than tempo. If that's tempo, that's rhythm. Stops, starts, phraseology. Your tempo may go at a certain speed, but you have those points to where you want to be halting, where you want to pull a phrase out, where you want to think about it in terms of phrases. And this will also lead to something else that I'll get to later on called pivot points. These are the spots where you can stop and you can change all of these things. So if you break it down into various rhythms, you can give actors places where all these other things change. Melody. It's the voice. When you're happy, what do people do? They tend to go up and down. They tend to be, this is great, this is awesome. And their melody goes up and their melody comes down. And when somebody's bored, things don't change much. They just kind of hold it back. Yeah, whatever you want to say. So using melody and using the range that you have in that melody can very much change how a character is presented and how that actor does that. Extended technique is one of my favorites. I actually had to talk to a number of my musician friends and come up with the actual name for this, because I've always called it grit. Extended techniques seem to be what people settled on. These are the things in music, this is what you do with an instrument that the instrument wasn't designed to do. So a pick drag on an electric guitar, a roll up on an organ, smacking the body of a guitar, overblowing a flute to get a higher harmonic. In VO terms, this is all the stuff that's nonverbal. Breaths, ums, lip smacks, gasps. This is one of the ways that you can really get rich performances out of actors and really delve down into making them sound real. You have to be careful. I've seen some actors who kind of learn this for the first time, some up-and-coming actors, and they finally realize, oh my God, I can throw all this stuff in. And unfortunately, they want to throw it into everything. So you have to be careful with it. But if you use extended technique in the right way, this is one of the ways that you really get depth in an actor and a performance, and you really start getting that realism in there. And then finally, arrangement. This is you as a producer, being able to take the entire script, being able to take any individual prompt, and knowing how this is going to be arranged. Just like a song, we're going to put the bridge here, we're going to put the chorus there, but it's also where you're going to put the instrumentation. When is it that you want to use any of these things? When is it that you know that we need to hit this point here? Something you should know well ahead of time. Sometimes you can't because you're getting a script cold, but you should always still be thinking about arrangement. And obviously, why are these important to know? This is a way that you communicate to the actor. This is one of the things that I've seen that people do incorrectly is they speak in vague terms. I want you to be happy. Can you put a little more smile in it? That's good. Can we do it again? And can you just melt into the line a little bit? I mean, and I've seen people do all these kind of things. And what does that mean? What is happy to you? An actor, just even something simple like you tell an actor, be happy. How you're happy and how you describe and project happy is probably different than how I do it. The thing is that we both know if you're happy and you're acting happy, I know you're happy. If I'm happy and acting happy, you know I'm happy, right? But telling somebody that is just going to make them do more of what they're already doing, because it's like, well, I'm being happy. Okay, I'll do happy times two. And and you're not going to get what it is that you're looking for. But if you tell them something specific, hey, push your notes up a little bit, raise your pitch a little bit, be a little bit louder with it, slow down, speed up. This they understand, and you're not telling them something vague. You're telling them something very concrete of what to do. And also, even if you don't, if you're directing and everything's going fine, that's great. But a lot of these are, if they're not in your toolbox already, these are really good things to refer to, because there's going to come a time where it's like, if I just tell them this one thing, and that's another good reason to know all this. Some common situations that I'll take you through. There are plenty more than this, but this is like a kind of a list of things that are pretty common that happen. So you get somebody who's too animated or sing-songy. You get somebody who's reading. You can tell they're reading it. Somebody who's not projecting. They're not being forceful enough. And an actor that just gets stuck on a specific line or a specific delivery, and they just can't seem to get out of their head. So let's start with the animated or too sing-songy. This is when you get someone who's reading like this, and they just seem to be overly animated and they're going up and down, and they come way down. And so first thing you do is, when somebody is doing that, they're usually speaking fairly quickly. And so a really easy fix that works a lot of the time is just to tell them to slow down. You're not criticizing, you have to be very careful with actors. They want to please, and you don't want to really overly criticize them. You need a performance out of them. So slow them down. Just say, hey, that's great. Why don't we take that just a little bit slower? If they are musical, you can use a term like, let's just take that like 10 beats a minute slower. If they're not necessarily musical, or you don't want to speak to them in music, just say, let's slow that down 5-10%. Let's do it again. Do what you're doing, but just slow it down a bit. They will naturally, because no one, if I exaggerate it, no one talks like this when they're going slow. People, if you slow them down, tend to compress themselves. You can specifically narrow their melody. And this is really, if somebody really does have a musical ear, give them a pitch. Hey, I don't want you to take anything above here. So when you're reading, don't take it all the way up here. Don't take it all the way down there. Stop right here. Stop at this spot. Just make sure that nothing goes above that. And I think everything else you're doing is great. Just keep it there. If you hear yourself going above this, just stop. And you can also lower their starting pitch. Okay, so this is your resting spot. Now I'm going to over-explain it. What you want, we're not going to put your resting spot here. We're going to put your resting spot down there. Take it down in pitch, go a little bit deeper in your register, and give it to me again. They're not going to use that same range. They're still going to be acting. They're still going to be doing the same thing that they were doing, but they're going to pull it down. And they're going to, and just because I'm thinking about this now, it also can work the other way, where if you raise their starting pitch, and it's dependent on the situation, people don't tend to continue. If your melody is doing this, when you raise or lower a pitch, it doesn't tend to continue to do this. It does narrow it. Going down is going to narrow their low end. Going up is going to narrow their high end. So depending on what they're doing, if you just change that starting pitch, it's going to automatically flatten them out a bit. Very common, especially in advertising scripts, which are always written to be conversational, or they're always told to be conversational, and they are never written to be conversational. But this happens in gaming too. And this really happens more with long soliloquies, narrated quest lines, things of that nature, where you hear the actor and they're not acting, they're reading, you can hear it in their voice, and you can hear that they're reading words on a page. This can also happen as you get deeper into a session. You're an hour, or two in. Even if you've taken breaks, the mind just starts looking at the paper. So, change their rhythm. If they're reading at a certain pace, if they're reading in a certain way, give them breaks. Give them spots where they can be stopped. Okay, at the end of this phrase, I want you to put a pause right there. And maybe put another one down there. Okay, let's take it again. And this causes them to think of each of these things as separate. And so they're not taking this all as one big chunk anymore. They're taking it as little values. And they will act those things in those little values. Encourage extended technique, encourage the nonverbals. Have them take a breath at a certain point. Have them put a sigh in. Have them put hesitations in, laugh, depending on what the line is. But by throwing that nonverbal in, by throwing that extended technique in, and sometimes this is really good to even do at the front end of a phrase. Have them walk into it, even though you know you're going to chop that off in editing and that's not going to be something there. Hey, laugh before you start this. Give me a deep breath before you start this. And that changes their mindset. And again, the use of pivot points. Taking those points in a phrase where you're going to actually change, where you have a sentence or where you have a phrase where you're going to start off with one emotion and you're going to pivot down and you're going to come to something else. The best thing about this is that when I'm done, I'm going to rule the world. 3 pivot points, 2 pivot points in there, 3 different phrases. It's changing each one of those spots. And sometimes if you just give them that, don't tell them how to do it, just say, do this in this spot, think about this there. Let them act, let them do that, but give them those pivot points. This doesn't typically happen when somebody is being cast for a soldier or something that is forceful all the way through, because in casting, you probably have already weeded out the people that just can't get on a mic and shout. But you have characters that are hired, that are created for their narrative value. But in games, they'll still get in combat, right? And something will happen. And when somebody is in this mode where they're just, where they've been talking like this, Commander, we have to go over here. And then you get to that point where they're in battle. A lot of times actors have, if you're not careful, can have this tendency to go, and you want them to go. So, and you can say shout, but a lot of times, interestingly enough, they still won't. It's almost like they're afraid they're going to blow up the microphone. So start by raising their starting pitch. Put them up here. So you're still going to tell them to speak loudly, but if you put them up there, they're automatically going to get louder, which is increasing their amplitude. Narrowing their melody in this case is don't let them go down. Push them up. Sometimes, especially if the line is fairly long, people lose steam as they go through, and they'll start off, they may start off like this, but by the time they get to the end of it, they've just kind of trailed off a bit. So don't let them do that. Say, yeah, keep everything up here. Keep everything, I don't want you to go below this, okay? And a staccato rhythm a lot of times, because if you tell them to do it like this, they'll keep their voice up, right? Keep them in that staccato rhythm. Again, all this depends on what line what the line is, but all of these things can come into play. And something that happens all the time. People get stuck on a line, people get stuck on a certain delivery, they hear it a certain way in their head, and they just can't get away from that. So sing it to them. And by sing it to them, similarly to what I did earlier, if you can, don't read words to them. Just give them nonsense. And the reason that I like to do that is because when you read, actors want to please, and they're going to try to mimic you. The problem is that you're probably not an actor. And so they're going to read back to you the way that because they want to please you, they're going to read back to you the way that you want it to. But if you eliminate the language and you just and you just go to that kind of stuff, you're conveying a melody, you're conveying a rhythm, you're conveying a tempo, you're conveying a pace, you're conveying all of these things. And they can put their own spin on that. And that's really what you want, right? You hired them to be an actor, let them act. Give them just the information that they need, and then let them take that and do what it is. And these are just things that all this helps you avoid. It helps you avoid line reading. It helps you avoid overemphasizing specific words. I've been in sessions where I've watched other people and they'll say things like, make sure you hit this word. And they may even say that. And they'll say it the way that they hear it. And again, the actor wants to please, so they're going to come back and they're going to just jam on that word. And it's like, okay, well, you're hitting it too hard. And then they'll try to jam on it a little bit less. And like, well, that's not enough. So again, if you're giving them a tempo, you're giving them a melody, you're giving them that, they'll hear it on their own. And they'll perform it the way that they should perform it. And they'll perform it as an actor. And then finally, spending too much time. Writers are notorious for stuff like this. Okay, you're 5 years old and you're with your mom, and I want you to remember what it was like when your mom didn't give you the ice cream that you wanted, and you know, how did you feel? And can you get to that right there? It's like, okay, actors don't necessarily understand that. My mom never took ice cream away from me when I was 5. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you want, but they're still going to try to play. Give them something specific, you know. So I want you to slow down. I want you to be a little quiet. Let's do it again. That may be all you need to do. You know, don't give them. An actor wants context, and you need to give them context. But the context is for them to act. And if they're not giving you the acting performance you want, then you want to start using specific things to get them to that spot. Be a producer. This is all part of arrangement. By be a producer, remember what your job is. Your job is to get a performance out of the actor. Your job is not to get in their way. Your job is to allow them to do what they do, to do what they've been hired to do. A lot of people think that when they are hired as a director or when they go in a session to direct, that that's what they're supposed to do, right? I am here to direct. No, you are not. You are there to listen. You are there to allow them to do what they do, and when they go away from what they need to do, that's when you direct, and that's the only time you direct. And the best talent directors I've seen are the people who say, that's great, let's move on, far more than they say almost anything else. Some of that is because you've cast your actors well, and you've got somebody who really understands the role and knows the role. But your job is not to take every line and go for the perfect take and to, yeah, let's do it, you know, the fourth ways from Sunday. You don't do that. You get the lines, you get the performance, you move on. You direct only when you have to. Recognize that this is a partnership. You and the actor. You and the actor and the team, whoever you're working with. Your job oftentimes is to translate what the dev team wants and what they're saying to you, and so you speak dev team here, and then you turn around and you speak actor. And so you don't want the dev team getting in the way, because they will say correctly all the things that they're looking for, but they will say it in like the ice cream example. And your job, again, is to get this out of the actors, to get the performances, to get them in character, to keep them in character, and stay out of the way after that. So just understand that your role is not to be the actor. Look for the non-obvious. By that, there are times that you can, if you've got an actor that's really in flow and that's really working well, you want to push the boundaries when you can. Because if they're in that moment and they're in that spot, let's try something different. That was a great take. Let's just try this and see how it works. I want you to really scream at the end of that. And maybe this is too over the top, but let's just try it and see what happens. Okay, so now an actor already knows that they've got the freedom to do whatever that is, you know, it's like, hey, this could be a little bit wacky, but that's fine. They've already got stuff that they like, so yeah, let's go for it. And you're not criticizing them. You're allowing them to act. You're allowing them to perform, and you know. But be careful with this, because kind of like the extended techniques and how people can overuse that, you can. Not every line needs to have the envelope pushed. Be judicious with it, but don't be afraid to use that either. Really, I think I'm missing some slides. Wow. All right, how much time was that? Awesome.
Yes, yes. Well, Randall, thank you so much. I was so captivated by this. So, well, I just forgot what to do next. So, guys, you're welcome to ask your questions if you have ones.
Thanks, Randall. That was excellent.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm thrilled, and I work for a rival game in Finland, and I'm supposed to start a bit arranging actually voiceover pretty soon. So it was really good to hear this before.
Thank you.
Going there. But my question. I was thinking that since I really love your approach, that if possible, would it be possible to brief the actors via like writing some notes between the lines of the script? So they would, you know, if you want to see or I don't know, okay, then you should have a musician actor who would understand the notes, the notation.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It depends on how well you know the actor, obviously. If you know that they have a musical background, that would be I have never done that personally, but that would be a really interesting thing to do. I think you're right that you would have to know that the person is a musician, because if you're going to write, you know, certain notations on there using, you know, like writing music on there, and they don't know music, that might just freak them out. But sure, I don't see why that would not be something to at least try. That would be a great experiment. I've never done that. I may try that with some people that I know. So thank you.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Thank you. It was really amazing and interesting.
Thank you.
Do you have any special tricks to deliver to voice actor any kind of, I don't know, things in script, how it's supposed to be delivered, like structure of the script? Any special notes there, any, I don't know, vertical, horizontal delivery, how it better work?
The answer is probably yes, and I may or may not be aware of it. But if I went and looked, I would probably see. Some of the things that I'll do with a script are kind of common sense. You know, you have a script that reads from here all the way through to the end. But especially if you're doing a game that's got any sort of combat or fighting in it, do all the things that are really low stress first. 2 reasons. It gets the person more into character, it gets them into the narrative lines, but also when it comes down to shouting and screaming and, you know, and hits and attacks and death cries and all, that's actually vocally stressful. So you want to put all that towards the end. It's almost like your script should go from low volume to high volume at the end. And also when you get to that end, you probably want to cut down the number of takes just to save their voice, maybe give them more breaks and things like that. I don't know if that answers your question. Is that the kind of thing that you were? Go ahead, ask, you know, clarify.
No, that's okay. I mean, and additional one. Have you ever worked with different languages, like localization to other languages, not only English, and get the emotion right, like the same emotion the voiceover actor did an original performance?
Yes. I do a lot of Spanish language. I'm still a little too chicken to take that on myself, only by myself, without somebody who is truly bilingual. But absolutely, you know, I'll still sit in session and I'll still hear things and go, I think we need to do this a little more there. I'm less directing when it comes to that, but I actually currently am, because of all the Spanish we do, I'm currently really studying Spanish because I want to be at that point where I feel very comfortable directing Spanish language sessions. But yes, even with other languages, I've done it with Japanese. I can't even remember all of them, but emotion is emotion. The language is different, and so sometimes you have to be careful if you don't know the language that you don't know where the emphasis is. But you can still hear the emotion, and I can still talk to the person who really is the talent director and at least ask. It's like, I don't think they're really, are they doing this? And if they say, oh yeah, they are, well, you kind of have to go with them. But a lot of times, like, well, do you want to hear it? Do you want to hear it a little more forceful? It's like, yeah, I think let's try that. And then, you know, defer to them. It's like, do you think that was right? And they're like, yeah, no, that sounds good. So, yes.
Yeah. Well, using my situation, I would like to ask a question from my side.
Sure.
Only a short one. So, continuing this this question about different languages, is that true? And maybe did you recognize that the same person speaking different languages may change how he sounds? So is that really true? For example, if a person speaks English, he sounds one way. When he switches, for example, into French or Italian, he sounds the different way. His tone, his pace, whatever.
Yes, I've never worked with an actor who is acting in two separate languages, at least not that I can recall. But no, because I do work with people who are bilingual. They're going to, you know, they speak English, which is how they'll communicate with me, but their native language or whatever they're being hired to do is something else. And absolutely, they talk differently, they pace differently in their native language than they do in the secondary language. And so I think for me, as a talent director learning Spanish, well, part of the reason that, you know, that for me, I think it's easier in some sense to be a talent director doing that is, again, I recognize that I'm not the actor. And so I need to be able to be fluent and I need to be able to hear what they're doing. But I don't necessarily, but you know, I'm not going to try to act. I'm not going to try to say, read it like this, give it to me like this. I will give them pointers and I'll give them little things that they need to do. I'll give them some of these principles, but I will not tell them how to do it. So, but for an actor, yes, I think people really do tend to pace themselves differently when they are in their native language than they do in a secondary or third language.
Thank you.
One more question
Sure.
occurred to my mind. Do you have experience about remote? Okay, you don't use the word directing, but producing the actor, because I think I will face again the situation. I did this once before that me and our audio designer we directed remotely via Skype actor in LA because we didn't have time to fly there and jet lag, and I live in Finland, so okay, it was only audio, so I think it was. I think you are a pretty non-verbal person. You use a lot of your hands and your expressions. So I was thinking that next time I will try to have a video FaceTime. Or do you have experience on this?
Yes, I would say that most of the direction I do is remote. I use actors from all over the world. The bulk of them, I should say the pockets, come from Los Angeles, New York, Vancouver, but I mean, I use actors everywhere. I've used people in Malaysia, in South Africa, certainly in London, in Europe, Berlin, so Mexico City. And Actually, even if I'm doing this, which you're right, that's my quarter Italian coming out, I guess. If I'm live in a session, I don't look at and this is just me personally, this is not like this is what you should do, this is just me personally. I don't watch the actors. I do not want to be influenced by whatever they are doing in the booth. I don't want to be influenced, you know, when they're raising their fists and they're shouting, and visually I can believe that this is, like, they're giving me the line that they want, and then only to listen to it back in playback and go, man, we should have done that again. They just didn't really go for it. So if I'm only listening to the voice, which is all that we want anyway, then I'm hearing it correctly. So I've done this where I will go into sessions and they're facing, so either my head is down or I will physically turn my chair so that I'm not watching them and all I am doing is listening. So for me, remote sessions, if they've got a good clear signal, if they've got a board feed going into Skype or whatever, Source Connect, it doesn't matter. So they're getting me as if I'm in the room and I'm getting them as if they're in the room. I'm totally golden with that. That's totally fine.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
For the speech. Do you feel difference in voiceover in games, cartoons, and movies? And do you see the difference in actors' behavior in working on movies or games or animation?
I don't do movies, but I do the rest. I've done TV, I've done advertising, and I've certainly done animation and games. And yes, there is a difference with each of them. There's not necessarily a macro difference in each, like all TV is like this, all advertising is like this, all animation is like this, and all games are like this, but there are some basic principles. The ones that people tend to get confused a lot are animation and video games. A lot of people think that these are very similar, and while they do share some similar principles, animation tends to lead towards the caricature and sometimes the funny, and video games tend to lead towards the dramatic. And not to say that cartoons can't be dramatic or that video games can't be funny or caricature-ish, but as a general rule, if you're just taking large overarching principles, you need to be a little more realistic and a little more real world when it comes to video games and add more drama than you do in animation, as a general rule. Advertising, which I won't touch on too much because none of us here are here about advertising, but it tends to be, what most of the time they really want is in an ideal world, they want the actor to sell without sounding like they're selling, which is a very hard thing because the scripts are often sold just complete, dead sale. So, thank you.
Anyone else?
Thanks, Randall. That was superb, and what an amazing vocal range you have, and to weave into the presentation, the continual demonstration.
Thank you.
The art was just brilliant. I guess I had a question in the sense where you talk about music as a language for helping the coaching the voice.
Mm-hmm.
But also in a lot of cases, there's a reflection between the music that may be going to play in the content and how someone would talk over the top.
Mm-hmm.
I think the key example that comes to mind is the King's Speech and the pairing of Beethoven's Ninth with an oration. Have you ever used music to help an actor get in the mood, to play them something, to perhaps say, try speaking while you're listening to this to see if it brings out certain...
Wow, no, I haven't, but that is a brilliant idea. That's like, I've never thought about that. I think that in certain places that would be a brilliant thing to do because music does set a mood. I guess because I'm just spitballing this along with you. One of the places where I think you'd have to be careful is does this music set the same mood to the actor that it sets to you, or are you giving them something that puts them off in a different way? But I will absolutely try that, and because that's intriguing. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you for being an audio guy.
It just struck me when you, when you were offering ways to encourage creativity indirectly, that sort of,
Right.
I think even when you sang aspects yourself, that here's something musical, now respond to it, is a dialogue that doesn't get in the way of the acting itself. Thanks for sharing so much in the talk and the way you framed it all.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Are we done? So,
hi, thanks. It's
Hello.
a great speech.
Thank you.
You know, sometimes we need to work with local advertisements. When our actors have a special pronunciation, have a special accents. It could be, for example, French in Canada or Spanish in South America.
Right.
And you know what? When you hear it first time, you think, "Oh, it sounds weird. It's very specific." But maybe it's not. Maybe it's natural, organic for them. And what's the question? In one hand, you need to save their specific pronunciation, and in the another hand, you need to use these musical principles you talk about. So how to do it? Where's the balance?
Well, I think that there's a difference. It depends on the actor that you're working with. Because if you're working with somebody, let's say you said French Canadian. If you're working with somebody who is French Canadian and they pronounce something a certain way, I think you allow them to do that. You default to their ear and their technique over your own. If it is somebody who is trying to do a French Canadian accent, or they're trying to do a Colombian accent, or whatever it may be, well, first of all, you as director really need to know what that accent is supposed to be, or you should have somebody there who really understands it. And in that case, again, because you kind of want to avoid line reading, I was in a Blizzard session a few months back, and they were doing they had an actor in there who was a really good actor who was doing Russian. The engineer is from Russia, and so even though he was the engineer, he was also there kind of as the ear, just to say, and he would give specific syllables, and I'm going to do this very badly, especially to a Russian-speaking audience, but things like "nya," and he would, but he wouldn't read the lines. He would just say, "When you get to this spot, do that." And a lot of times he would tell the director, who would then, and she would be like this, "Yeah, that's it." Okay, so then she would, so they would continue to speak with one voice, would then communicate that to the actor. But yeah, but I think if that person were Russian, that the actor were, and he was saying something, even if the engineer's like, "Oh, I don't know, it doesn't sound right," it's like, I think you let him go. It's like, this is how the guy speaks. He's Russian. Let him. I think he's okay. So.
well, I'm afraid we are actually run out of time already. So the last question.
Hi, Randall.
Hi.
I got a question about players' feedback, because when you're working with voice actors, you decide about their palette, about the inflections, but what if players got another vision? Because sometimes they can feedback on some voice actor that he or she sounds not so good as they expect. So what are you doing? How you deal with it?
I'm not sure that I've ever gotten feedback from players. I'll get feedback from reviews. Yeah, I've never had players. I think I'm too many layers back. There may be players who are going to the developer or the publisher and saying, "I don't like this person," but they really never find me. Which is good. How I know that we've done a really good job, generally, one of the things about audio, for any of you who, you know, whether you are in audio as a career, whether you're looking to be there, one of the first things you need to understand is that we are the last thought. We are the stepchildren of gaming. And it's almost like we've made this game like, oh, at some point we should put in voiceover, right? You know, and it's just what happens. You know, we'll get to that at some point. So you're always doing it towards the end. And the thing is when there are reviews, if they like the game, as a general rule, they like the audio. If they hate the game, as a general rule, they hate the audio. So when I know we do really well, and when I feel the best, is when somebody plays it, is when a reviewer is going through a game, and they go, man, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong. The voice acting was so good. That's what kept me, and it's like, we win, you know? But if they say that and they like the game, it's like, you don't even know if they really paid any attention to it. They just like the game, so they're going to like everything. So.
Okay, thank you so much,
Kate.
Randall, for such a spectacular presentation.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, so emotional one. Thank you guys for attending. If you have some more questions, you may find Randall somewhere on the venue. So thank you.
We have many great people here at 4C today, and here's one of them. Hi, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Alexander Markovic. I am Creative Director at Ministry of Games, and I'm here to talk about city building games and design principles of those.
Nice. Do you remember your very first video game that you've played?
Sure, it was The Prince of Persia back in something like 89 or whatever it would have been. Yes.
It's a great game back in the day and still. What's your favorite game of all time today?
I guess I like mobile games, so at the moment I think my favorite game would be probably something like Brawl Stars or Clash Royale, so Supercell PvP titles, or on the other hand some city building titles like Township.
What do you think about the state of modern video game industry overall?
Well, I guess there is a lot happening at the moment, which is awesome. The core games are doing awesome stuff, the casual games are doing awesome stuff, so I think it is awesome that inclusion is happening on all sides, right?
Anything that maybe irritates or saddens you, something that you don't like in the state of game dev today?
Well, the only thing that might sadden us is the sometimes there is a bit of lack of inclusion happening, and sometimes there is a certain amount of kind of toxic behavior that occurs in the gaming circles. But other than that, I think it is just moving in the awesome direction.
Well, it is moving in an awesome direction, and we're here to try and foresee it. Speaking of which, what do you see happening in the industry in like a 10 years' time? What will be the new thing, the new trend, do you think?
Well, hopefully the mobile games stay relevant, right? But other than that, obviously AR and geolocation games are super interesting, and stuff that's happening with that is super exciting. And also, hopefully as things move forward, we get more inclusive or like more engaged worlds that we kind of play together with each other. And I think this is something that we're hopefully moving towards too.
Well, you're part of the industry, you can help move it forward. Speaking of which, how did you end up in the industry? How did you come here?
Well, I guess as anyone else, I just kind of liked the whole idea of the escapism of the games that was offered to us as we were young, and I just kind of stick with them throughout my youth, and it was a logical choice growing older, right?
What's more important for you in games that you like graphics, storytelling, the gameplay, or maybe a combination?
I guess in the end, for me, it comes back to the community and then kind of the shared experience of playing the games. So it is in the end about kind of multiplayer of it.
What about the single-player games then?
Which are also awesome. There is nothing about games that is not awesome, right? So single-player games also cool. Whatever story-driven RPGs, story-driven text adventure games. There is nothing to dislike in those either, but for me, just kind of the multiplayer experience is something that drives the medium forward into kind of this new, less explored areas of just kind of playing with your, children or with your parents or with your grandparents. Why not? And I guess this is something that just excites me.
So the future is in multiplayer and socializing in games. Is that right for you?
Well, I hope it is I guess what I'm saying.
Well, we can move it over there. St. Pete, we're here today. What do you think about the city?
A beautiful city, repeat. Awesome times to be had all around, and I'm glad to be here. Thankful for the opportunity.
Glad to have you here. Also surprised you know the cult song about St. Pete. What about the conference? I know it's the first day, but what are your impressions so far? Maybe expectations?
Well, I've met some awesome people all around. I'm looking forward to hearing their talks, to hearing their thoughts on the future of gaming and the future of the industry, and have high hopes.
Any specific speech you're maybe looking forward to? Somebody you want to listen to?
So there is, for example, the Greg Street, the design director of League of Legends, will be talking about using user feedback to improve your game design. So this is something that, for example, I'm very interested in. And also anything from game design track is something that appeals to me very much.
Well, hope you find it useful. And finally, if you were standing here in my place interviewing yourself, what question would you ask yourself?
Whoa, not sure at all.
I guess you have all the answers then.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, I hope you find more answers here on 4C, and thank you very much, and have a nice time.
Thank you.
So we've prepared a few questions for one of our speakers. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Ville Rauma from Fingersoft, Finland. So, yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Please tell me, what's the first game you have ever played, the video game?
I think that would probably be maybe Microsoft Flight Simulator 3. And
It was your very first, right?
Yeah.
All right. Which one is your favorite today?
Right now, basically, Divinity Original Sin 2 is like really awesome.
It's amazing. I gotta agree with you there. And what led you to the gaming industry? How did you start?
Well, basically, I was studying in University of Oulu, and we had a training period where you go to a company, and there happened to be a game company in the list where you can pick where you want to go, and I was like, yeah, I want to go there. So that's how I got started.
So they just took you in?
Yeah, because it's like the companies kind of volunteer that we'll take trainees from the university, so you can kind of pick where you want to go. So yeah.
Sounds great. So what is your favorite thing about the video game industry today?
Well, I don't know. It's like it's really hectic, and it's quite kind of free kind of environment where people can really be, you know, who they are, and it's kind of laid back. So I think that's pretty cool.
It generally is. But are there maybe things that make you mad or sad in the today's state of gaming industry?
Well, I don't know. Like, it's difficult to say. Sometimes there are things, but nothing pops to mind right now. Like maybe sometimes like they, especially like huge studios, kind of focus on single thing. You know how it is. Like sometimes there's only World War II games, and next you have only like future mech games or whatever. So it's like always these big trends and less about like innovation and new type of games. So maybe that.
Speaking of trends, do you see any trend surfacing in 10 years or so? How do you view the gaming industry in the nearest future?
Well, long term, like 10 years, I think probably there's gonna be big changes. Like of course VR, AR are big, but right now they're like really new stuff. So it's not really like a big business opportunity right now. But that's probably gonna be big in the future. I think it's gonna take a few years. But yeah, at least that.
So you feel like technologies are going to be the game changer here?
Well, at least with VR and AR, I feel like the experience is so awesome that when you do that, everybody who tries it thinks it's awesome. But right now, it's just too cumbersome and complicated to do. So I think that's the biggest issue there. But yeah, also of course, there's gonna be probably like different trends in the way games, like the kind of like the free-to-play model right now, how it is, probably will change. It's always changing. So yeah.
That's true. But speaking experiences, what do you think is more important in a game? Like the age-old question: is it the graphics, is it the gameplay, the storytelling?
Gameplay, of course. Yeah.
The simplest question of all. Okay. So what do you think about St. Petersburg?
I love it so far. It's the first time actually for me in Russia and in St. Petersburg. So yeah.
And what about the conference?
Yeah, it's looking really awesome. It's like well organized, so I like it.
What was the best question you were asked so far?
I don't know which game you are playing right now, of course, because I'm waiting to go back home so I can continue playing.
I completely understand you there. But which question would you ask yourself if you were interviewing yourself?
Oh, that's a hard one. You know, what's going to be your next game? And I couldn't answer right now because we are working on a lot of prototypes and we'll see what it's going to be. But yeah.
Great. Are you looking forward to any specific presentation? Which do you want to listen to most?
Yeah, I did mark a few. I don't remember the titles right now, but they were like interesting because there's a lot of like really cool people here who know like a lot about a lot of things. So yeah. I think for me, maybe on the kind of leadership business track is maybe the most kind of interesting for me right now because that's my job. So, yeah.
Well, you're one of the cool people here, so thank you for coming and thank you for being a part of this.